He settles into his plush leather chair in Miami Beach, the Gulf breeze drifting through open shutters as sunlight dances across a wall of platinum records. At 79, Barry Gibb finally leans forward in reflection, eyes distant yet bright with memory. Across decades, he's worn many hats. Member of the Bee Gees, producer-songwriter, but tonight he lifts the curtain on one of pop's most luminous ghosts, Roy Orbison. To the world, Orbison's towering voice and melancholic ballads defined a generation. To Barry, he was a mentor, a kindred spirit, and the secret catalyst behind some of the Gibb brothers' most enduring melodies. After years of reverence and reticence, Barry tells the truth about the man who wore black clothes like armor, carried heartbreak like a precious gem, and reshaped Barry's own sense of musical possibility. Barry first encountered Roy Orbison in 1967 at a sunlit session at London's Olympic Studios. At 27, Barry was basking in the stratosphere of Massachusetts, and to love somebody, yet he felt an ache for deeper emotional resonance. Roy arrived in a tailored suit, sunglasses shielding eyes that held both sorrow and steel. As Orbison's operatic tenor echoed through the stone walls, Barry sensed a seismic shift. This was not pop confection but raw, molten soul. Roy's performance of In Dreams left Barry breathless, the final note hanging like a confession. Afterwards, Roy approached with a gentle nod and introduced himself. "Call me Roy," he said, voice soft yet deliberate. "Let's find the truth in our songs." In the weeks that followed, Barry shadowed Roy through cabaret clubs and TV sound stages. Behind the scenes, he discovered the man behind the legend. A perfectionist haunted by the memory of his first wife's tragic passing, a father of three whose grief fueled each poignant lyric. Barry watched Roy pore over lyric sheets in his dressing room, marking each vowel with colored pencils and humming variations until a melody resonated. Roy knew the weight of every syllable, Barry recalls now. "He taught me that a song isn't just music, it's an altar of emotion where truth must rest." Their collaboration crystallized in early 1968 when Barry invited Roy to record a duet version of To Love Somebody. In a flash of inspiration, Roy transformed the Bee Gees' soulful plea into a hymn of resilience. Barry remembers Roy's phrasing. He stretched somebody until it felt like a plea to the heavens. When playback rolled back through the speakers, Barry sensed something divine had occurred. "This isn't my song anymore," Barry admitted. "It's our testament to pain and hope." That duet, unreleased for decades, became a secret treasure Barry guarded, proof that Roy's alchemy could transmute their own compositions into something transcendent. Offstage, Barry discovered a playful side to Roy. On late nights, they'd sneak into London's jazz clubs, Roy slipping into the shadows to listen to sax players whisper melodies. Barry watched Roy tap his foot to Dizzy Gillespie's trumpet, eyes closing as if resurrecting buried memories. Afterwards, Roy would share stories of his youth in Vernon, Texas, of singing hymns in a wooden church with his mother, of learning guitar chords on a battered K acoustic, of penning, only the lonely, in a hotel room while nursing a broken heart. Each anecdote reinforced for Barry that Roy's artistry was forged in life's crucible, not in factory-style pop factories. As the Bee Gees' career soared, Barry leaned on Roy's counsel during tumultuous times. In 1970, when Barry's voice cracked under the strain of endless tours, Roy phoned at dawn with a simple directive: rest it. Let it heal. He sent strict vocal exercises, gentle humming across improvisational melodies, to preserve Barry's range. When managers balked at delaying concerts, Barry pointed to Roy's steadfast example, demanding respect for the instrument above all. "Roy didn't chase charts," Barry explains. "He chased authenticity. And he showed me that protecting your voice means protecting your soul." Their friendship deepened in Los Angeles, where Roy resided amid a community of elite musicians. Barry often dropped by Roy's Laurel Canyon home, guitar in hand, to workshop new Bee Gees material. Roy's feedback was incisive yet nurturing. He'd raise an eyebrow at a misplaced harmony, then hum a counter melody to guide Barry back on track. He challenged Barry to explore minor chords that mirrored his own haunting style, encouraging richer emotional depth. Barry laughs now, recalling Roy's lament when a demo lacked feeling. "Sounds like wallpaper," Roy quipped. "Where's the blood?" The sting of that remark has echoed in Barry's mind whenever he drafts a new song, pushing him to bleed on the page. But the truth Barry now shares goes further than musical mentorship. He reveals Roy's quiet generosity. To the nights Roy opened his massive mansion to street musicians, offering food, gear, and advice, the anonymous checks Roy sent to Barry's favorite children's charity in Britain. The handwritten notes Roy tucked into Barry's hotel room, reminding him that family comes first. When Barry's son Stephen was born in 1969, Roy surprised Barry with a silver, gold-plated guitar, inscribed simply, "For Stephen, with love and sound." Barry's voice still trembles at the memory. Roy's kindness wasn't publicity stunts. It was his way of living the compassion he sang about. Tonight, as Barry closes his eyes and listens to the hushed hum of the Atlantic waves, he feels Roy Orbison's presence in every note of his own voice. His weathered hands rest on the armrests of the chair that bears the marks of countless interviews. At 79, Barry Gibb finally tells the world the truth about Roy Orbison. That behind the legend of the Caruso of rock lay a humble visionary who shaped the course of pop music and who forever taught Barry that the greatest songs are those that lay bare the human heart. Barry remembers the afternoon Roy Orbison summoned him to A&M Studios in Hollywood, midway through the Bee Gees' Red Cliff sessions. It was 1972 and Barry was eager to capture a new sound, a mix of harmony and rock edge, but he felt something essential was missing. Roy emerged from Studio B holding a battered leather satchel and offered Barry a sheaf of handwritten lyric snippets. "These are for you," Roy said. "Not songs I need, but ideas I think you might." Inside were half-written lines about longing and redemption. "One your heart knows the way even shadows bow." Barry tucked them into his pocket and listened as Roy demonstrated how to mold those fragments into song, bending his voice into that trademark swoop that left Barry's own melodies yearning for emotional weight. Later that night, Barry retreated to his home studio and pulled out Roy's scraps. He sifted through them as if reading a private journal, then began pairing Roy's lines with a fresh progression in G minor. When he pressed play on the demo, he could almost hear Roy stepping into the harmony, its ache resonant in every note. That song became Love Has a Way, an unreleased track Barry shelved for years until a 2001 tribute album honored Roy's memory. Listening later, Barry realized the piece was as much Roy's than his own. "Roy gifted me more than words," he reflects. "He gave me permission to bleed in my music." Off camera, Barry observed Roy's struggle to reconcile commercial success with artistic integrity. While the Bee Gees navigated disco's siren call, Roy remained steadfast in balladry. Barry recalls meeting Roy at a Hollywood dinner party where someone casually asked, "When will we hear you cut loose on something groovy?" Roy lifted his glass and replied quietly, "I cut loose every time I face the microphone. That's my groove." Barry admired his friend's conviction and later used that phrase, "Find your groove," as a mantra when the Gibb brothers wrestled with their evolving sound. In private moments, Roy confided fears Barry had never expected. One evening on Roy's veranda overlooking Sunset Boulevard, Roy admitted to Barry that he'd begun to question the purpose of his art after the loss of his wife Claudette and 2 sons in '68. He told Barry that the red leather seat of his touring car had become a coffin cushion in his mind, the site where he first learned how cruel fate can be. "Every chord I play," Roy said, "feels like exhuming a cemetery." Barry listened in silence, holding Roy's hand as the older man revealed how songwriting had saved him from despair. Their friendship deepened that night, forged by shared vulnerability few fans could have imagined. Inspired by Roy's relentless pursuit of truth, Barry experimented with new vocal textures. He practiced ornamented vibratos that mimicked Orbison's signature brand, weaving them into Bee Gees' harmonies on tracks like "I'm Gonna Love You Through It All." When Maurice questioned the idea of adding tremolo to a pop ballad, Barry shrugged and said, "Roy taught me there's grace in fragility." That decision helped the song top charts in Europe and Canada, proving that listeners craved emotional nuance as much as disco beats. Barry also learned from Roy's meticulous approach to performance. During the recording of Crying, Barry watched Roy demand multiple takes, each with slight variations in phrasing, until the engineer Andrew Sandoval said, "You've got it, Roy. Don't ring it louder, ring it quieter." Roy's knack for revisiting a take with subtler emotion lingered in Barry's mind for decades. When the Bee Gees rehearsed for the Children of the World tour, Barry insisted on recording one demo of "Wish You Were Here" in near silent whisper, capturing breath and heartage. He dedicated that performance to Roy's lesson true power often hides in hushed confession. In social circles, Roy's humility astounded Barry. The Big O could have coasted on his legend, yet Barry recalls Roy flying under the radar at a 1975 ASCAP banquet, quietly consoling a songwriter whose pitch had been repeatedly rejected by publishers. Roy slipped him a business card and a note reading, "Don't let the doors shut on your words." That act of solidarity moved Barry to establish the Bee Gees Foundation's Songwriters Fund years later, ensuring emerging composers received support when doors seemed closed. When Roy faced dwindling radio play in the late 70s, Barry persuaded him to try a dude of Fool Your Time for a Saturday Night Fever outtake. Roy hesitated. Disco felt foreign to him, but Barry recalled Roy's words. Find the truth in every beat. The recording never made the film, yet Barry cherishes it as evidence of Roy's boundless adaptability and of their creative risk-taking together. Tonight, Barry sits back and feels the pulse of Roy's presence in every ornamentation he weaves through modern tributes. At 79, Barry Gibb finally tells the truth about Roy Orbison, that beyond the black clothes and epic shriek lay a man who navigated unimaginable grief with music as his lifeline. A man who, by sharing his courage and insight, reshaped Barry's artistry and helped him embrace emotional honesty in a world chasing rhythms. The first time Barry heard Roy Orbison layer his own harmony beneath the final chorus of "It's Over," Barry was in Studio A of Criteria in Miami. The Bee Gees were laying down tracks for their 1975 album, yet Barry found himself transfixed by Roy's effortless glide through octaves. As Roy wrapped his voice around Barry's lead, Barry felt a jolt. This was more than perfect pitch. It was a communion of two souls speaking through song. After the session, Barry asked how Roy maintained such crystalline power night after night. Roy shrugged, eyes distant. "I think of every note as a promise to someone I lost," he said softly. In that moment, Barry understood that Roy's vocal gift carried the weight of profound desire, to heal, to remember, to transcend. Barry began drafting melodies that echoed Roy's sweeping arcs, grateful for guidance yet wary of imitation. He approached Roy one morning in the studio's lounge, coffee in hand. "Teach me to breathe into the silence," he said. Roy smirked, then demonstrated a breathing exercise he'd used since his earliest days singing gospel in Texas. He inhaled through his nose for 4 counts, held for 6, and exhaled slowly over 8, shaping air into an unbroken ribbon of sound. Barry tried it, feeling tension melt as his diaphragm expanded. They practiced in hushed tones until Roy nodded, satisfied. "Now you own your space," Roy said. "Let the silence carry the weight, then fill it with truth." Their friendship deepened when Barry invited Roy to contribute to the Bee Gees' 1981 project, Living Eyes. Roy arrived bearing a stack of lyric sheets and a skeletal arrangement for a song called Shadows and Light. Barry recalls being awestruck by Roy's handwritten notes, words like "co," "a yearning," "olo," scrawled in margins. Together, they fleshed out the composition, Roy suggesting a key change into D minor to amplify bittersweet emotion. When they recorded the duet, engineers captured Roy's voice in one take, the raw vibrato quivering like a plucked string. The final mix layered Barry's harmonies beneath Roy's lead, creating a tapestry of regret and hope that became a secret highlight for early fans of the album. Away from the studio, Barry witnessed Roy's deep compassion for fellow musicians. During a late 1978 session at Gold Star Studios, a young guitarist named Tommy hesitated to play a take, convinced his mistakes rendered him worthless. Roy stepped in, crouching beside him at the amp. "Music isn't perfection," Roy whispered. "It's emotion set loose." He demonstrated a riff that bent halfway between major and minor chords, saying each dissonant note was an opportunity to inject soul. Tommy struck a chord that trembled with vulnerability, tears pricking his eyes. Roy patted his shoulder and walked back to Barry. "Sometimes it takes just one person to believe," Roy said, "to change a life." As Barry navigated personal sorrow following the death of his twin Maurice in 2003, he found himself reaching for Roy's earlier counsel. Though Roy had passed in 1988, Barry carried Roy's letter from the late 60s. A typewritten note offering solace after Barry faced public backlash for a bold musical experiment. The paper had yellowed, but Roy's words remained vibrant. "When you follow your heart, you carry your truth louder than any chorus." Barry clutched that letter nightly, drawing strength from Roy's conviction. It guided him through the darker passages of grief, reminding him that music's purpose lay in transformation, not just celebration. In 2006, Barry honored Roy's legacy by producing the tribute album, The Big O's Echo, gathering artists from All Saints to Chris Christopherson to record Orbison classics. Barry ensured every arrangement retained Roy's minimalist beauty. He skipped flashy orchestration, opting instead for stripped-back guitars and single-string piano. When Linda Ronstadt's cover of Blue Bayou played through Barry's speakers, the fragile tremble in her voice echoed Roy's original resonance. At the album's release party, Barry raised a glass and said, "This is our way of returning Roy's gift, his honesty, to the world." Tears glistened in the eyes of everyone present, each respect paid echoing across genres and generations. Barry's own songwriting evolved under Roy's enduring influence. On his 2016 solo record, In the Shadow of the Sun, Barry penned Black Coat Reverie, a ballad built around themes Roy had once explored, the interplay of darkness and elevation. He adopted Roy's rhythmic phrasing, long, sustained verses collapsing into quick, urgent refrains. When the song debuted on BBC Radio, listeners noted its haunting familiarity, not realizing they were encountering Barry channeling Roy's ethos of emotional incisiveness. Barry smiled when fans messaged that the track felt like a lost Orbison gem rediscovered in modern form. Beyond the music, Barry carried Roy's lessons into philanthropy. In 2010, he launched the Gibb Orbison Music Fund, offering grants to bereaved children interested in music education. Barry explained that grants weren't meant to replace loss, but to build bridges from grief to creation, mirroring how Roy had turned personal tragedy into artistic breakthroughs. The fund enabled dozens of young musicians to receive instruments, lessons, and mentorship, offering them the same lifeline Roy had offered Barry so many years ago. Tonight, as Barry prepares for a private memorial concert marking what would have been Roy's 89th birthday, he tunes his vintage Hofner bass, recalling Roy's gentle admonition. Always trust your ear more than your eyes. He remembers Roy leaning over at Abbey Road, gesturing toward Barry's score. Feel it, Roy said. Don't just read it. And so Barry plays, each note an echo of Roy's voice, each harmony a testament to the power of truth laid bare. At 79, Barry Gibb finally tells the world the truth about Roy Orbison. That beyond the myth of black-clad grandeur lay a humble visionary whose generosity, grief, and unshakable belief in music as healing forged Barry's own journey, and through him, resonated across time. By the late 1980s, Barry found himself drawn into one of Roy's final creative triumphs, the Traveling Wilburys. Barry recalled the day George Harrison called to say, "Roy's in a groove. Come hear him." At a sunlit soundstage in Los Angeles, Barry watched Roy stride in wearing his signature black suit, eyes concealed behind dark lenses yet shining with mischief. When Roy stepped to the microphone, he sang, handled with care, as if he carried the weight of every heartbreak he'd ever known. Barry marveled at how Roy's voice could blend seamlessly with George's gentle warmth, Tom Petty's gravel, Jeff Lynne's precision, and Bob Dylan's rough edges. In that moment, Barry realized Roy was teaching him an essential lesson: collaboration isn't dilution, it's elevation. He carried that insight back into his own sessions, urging the Bee Gees to embrace outside voices rather than shield their harmonies behind closed doors. Soon after, Barry received a cassette of Roy's duet with K.D., Lang On, Crying. He listened late one night in his Miami studio, the tape humming through worn speakers. When Roy joined K.D.'s crystalline phrasing, Barry felt a stirring as profound as his first encounter with In Dreams. The duet's modern arrangement still honored Roy's classic tremolo, reminding Barry that true artistry transcends eras. He called the engineer and asked for the session notes, studying every instrument choice, from pedal steel to strings, to understand how Roy's team had created space for both voices. Barry then applied those lessons to his own productions, dialing back orchestration, accentuating silence between lines, and letting emotion guide each instrumental break. He credited Roy's comeback duet with inspiring him to revisit ballad form in a post-disco world. Offstage, Barry learned that Roy's generosity never waned, even as he achieved this late career renaissance. Barry recalled an evening at Roy's Laurel Canyon home after one Wilbury session, where Roy led impromptu jam circles on the patio. Guitarists of every skill level gathered to play alongside him, encouraged to explore leads without fear of judgment. Barry listened as Roy insisted, "Every note you play is valid if it comes from your heart." When a nervous teenager accidentally struck a wrong chord, Roy smiled and transformed the mistake into a counter-melody, turning awkwardness into art. Barry realized this was Roy's greatest gift, the capacity to uplift others, belief in vulnerability as the truest form of strength. He carried Roy's blueprint into mentoring young artists through the Songwriters Fund, striving to replicate that inclusive spirit. By 1988, Barry sensed Roy's health was fragile. Yet Roy's dedication remained unwavering. Barry received a call from Roy's manager inviting him to fly to Nashville for overdub sessions on Mystery Girl. Barry arrived at the RCA Studio B control room to find Roy seated at the piano, frail but focused. Roy motioned for Barry to join at a second keyboard. Together, they layered harmonies on tracks like You Got It, their voices weaving around each other in a delicate pas de deux. Barry watched Roy's hand tremble as he hit the highest notes, then steady himself with quiet resolve. When the final take played back, Roy reached across and squeezed Barry's arm. "Thank you for hearing me when I thought no one would," he whispered. That session became a hallowed memory Barry would recount for decades as proof of Roy's enduring courage. In the days before Mystery Girl's release, Barry joined Roy on a brief promotional tour stop in Dallas. The venue was a modest listening party, yet Roy arrived with warmth reserved for old friends. Barry remembered Roy greeting every attendee individually, peering over his sunglasses with gratitude. When a young fan asked how Roy found the strength to record new music amid health struggles, Roy replied, "Hope is a song that refuses to end." Barry watched Roy deliver that line with quiet conviction and knew he was witnessing an artist who had never allowed despair to silence his gift. The next year, when Mystery Girl topped charts and critics hailed it as Roy's finest work, Barry took pride not in chart positions, but in the triumph of the human spirit Roy had championed. Roy passed away the following December, and Barry mourned not only a mentor but a brother in music. At Roy's memorial, Barry joined George Harrison on stage to perform, in dreams, under a canopy of stars. As Barry's falsetto soared over the gently strummed guitars, he felt Roy's presence in every note. In that tribute, Barry committed publicly to preserving Roy's legacy. He curated unreleased demos, arranged posthumous albums, and made Roy's handwritten lyric journals available to scholars, ensuring Roy's own voice guided future interpretation. Barry understood that truth isn't a static monument, but a living narrative, one that must be revisited, celebrated, and re-examined. Today, Barry carries Roy's influence into his eldest son Stephen's songwriting, sharing the same breathing exercises and emotional framing Roy once taught him. He guides Barry's grandchildren through Roy's classic recordings, pointing out the subtle ornamentation in Roy's vibrato or the exact moment Roy chose to hold a note. Barry's own performances now include tributes to Roy, seamlessly slipping Orbison's crescendos into Bee Gees medleys as an homage to the man who first showed him that power lies in honesty. At awards ceremonies, Barry honors Roy's memory by narrating a brief anecdote, Roy's midnight gospel harmonies in Texas church, Roy coaxing a trembling guitarist, Roy's vow to keep singing despite pain. Each story reminds audiences that behind every legend stands a human being shaped by vulnerability and resolve to transform it into art. As Barry approaches 80, he often settles at dusk in the same leather chair where he first resolved to tell Roy's story in depth. He runs a finger across the platinum discs on the wall and envisions Roy's silhouette beside his own, their voices intertwined in a duet that defies time. At 79, Barry Gibb finally told the truth about Roy Orbison. That beyond the mournful ballads and towering performances lived a humble visionary whose generosity and sacrifice reshaped pop music's possibilities. Barry's vow now is simple, to let Roy's truth live on in every song he writes, every voice he nurtures, and every listener moved by the tremble of a note that dares to reveal the heart's secret ache. In the years after Roy's passing, Barry found himself carrying a torch for Orbison's memory, one that burned brighter with each tribute he organized. In 1992, Barry produced the televised special, Roy Orbison, a black and white night, reviving the late star's spirited collaboration with friends including Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Costello, and K.D. Lang. Barry arranged for the original tapes, filmed in stark monochrome, to receive new mixes that highlighted Roy's voice alongside live strings and subtle harmonies. He insisted on preserving Roy's nuanced phrasing, the way Roy lingered on a single word, letting the microphone capture every breath. When the special aired, fans old and new were riveted by Roy's enduring presence. Barry recalls reading letters for weeks afterward, notes from grieving widows, aspiring singers, and elderly fans who found comfort in Roy's defiant cadences. "That night cemented my belief," Barry says softly, "that Roy's spirit sings on, bridging time and sorrow." Determined to bring Orbison's songs to fresh audiences, Barry collaborated with filmmakers to place Roy's classics in blockbuster soundtracks. He personally pitched, in dreams, for David Lynch's Blue Velvet, believing Roy's ethereal lament would deepen the film's surreal tapestry. When the film premiered to critical acclaim, Barry marveled at how a song written in a dusty studio in Texas could echo through cinematic dreamscapes. He later brokered placement of, "Oh, Pretty Woman," in Pretty Woman, transforming the song into a worldwide anthem that generations still hum on city streets. Barry's strategic placements didn't commodify Roy's work, they recontextualized it, showing audiences that Roy's truth, his fearless vulnerability, was universal. Barry's stewardship extended into archival restoration. He spearheaded a multi-year project to remaster Roy's original tapes, rescuing decades-old masters from deterioration. He visited mastering studios in Nashville and London, guiding engineers as they replaced worn-out analog reels with digital transfers that preserved every nuance of Orbison's vibrato. During one late-night session, Barry held a flashlight over a fraying tape cartridge and whispered a prayer that Roy's voice wouldn't be lost. When the restored tracks finally crackled to life, Barry listened in the hush of the control room, tears glistening at the realization that Roy's legacy would endure with pristine clarity. Philanthropy became a cornerstone of Barry's tribute efforts. In 2005, he and Roy's widow Barbara established the Roy Orbison Music Fund, allocating proceeds from reissued albums to provide music therapy for bereaved children. Barry traveled to children's hospitals in Chicago and Manchester, watching as young patients hold tiny toy guitars and learn to strum chords under volunteer instructors, each lesson echoing Orbison's belief that music heals the heart. Barry often performed at benefit concerts, singing Crying, with a simple piano accompaniment to remind listeners that tears can be gateways to hope. He dedicated each performance to Roy's memory, urging attendees to donate generously so that more children could find solace in song. Barry's own songwriting took on shades of Orbison's influence. On his 2010 solo album Greenfields, Barry recorded Lonely Blue, a ballad written with his sons that wove Orbison like swoops into its chorus. He recorded it in an intimate studio session, asking his engineer to mic his breath and vocal rasp with the same intimacy Roy had always commanded. When Barry debuted the song at a singer-songwriter festival, audiences rose to their feet, moved by its raw poignancy. Afterward, a young songwriter approached Barry, eyes shining, and said, "Your voice broke my heart in the best way." Barry saw Roy's lesson reflected in that encounter. The greatest gift a singer can give is the freedom to feel deeply. As digital platforms emerged, Barry guided Roy's catalog into the streaming age. He curated playlists that juxtaposed Orbison classics with modern artists who echoed his style, Smokey Robinson, Norah Jones, and even Amy Winehouse, creating sonic bridges between eras. He wrote thoughtful liner notes for each playlist, illuminating Roy's influence on melody, lyricism, and emotional honesty. When the Orbison Essentials collection launched on streaming services, it quickly climbed global charts, exposing a new generation to Roy's timeless voice. Barry reveled in comments from listeners discovering Orbison for the first time. "My grandmother played only the Lonely on a scratchy record player," wrote one user. "Now my daughter plays it on her phone, and I cry again." Barry understood that Roy's truth, his capacity to transmit tears through a song, remained alive in hearts that beat decades too young for his era. In 2017, Barry edited and released Roy Orbison, the complete monument of MGM singles, a box set spanning Roy's early career. He included rare B-sides and demos that revealed Roy experimenting with country blues and rockabilly riffs before settling into his signature style. Barry annotated each track with personal notes: where Roy was when he recorded it, what mood stirred the lyric, how Roy's phrasing evolved from take to take. Fans and scholars praised the set as a definitive chronicle, proof that Roy's artistry had roots in humble beginnings and flourished through fearless exploration. Barry considers it his most personal tribute, a gift from one musical brother to another. Tonight, as a soft rain taps on the Miami beach window, Barry settles back into his chair and opens a worn photo album. He flips to a black and white image of himself and Roy in Olympic Studios. Barry in a pale suit, Roy in his trademark black, both clutching acoustic guitars. Barry traces Roy's silhouette with gentle reverence, recalling the first time he heard that legendary tremolo. At 79, Barry Gibb finally tells the world the truth about Roy Orbison, that beyond the soaring vocals and tragic ballads lay a man of profound generosity, resilience, and unwavering belief in music's power to heal. As the rain falls in gentle rhythms, Barry whispers into the hush, "Your voice lives on, Roy, in every heart that dares to sing its truth." In the decades since Roy Orbison's final recordings, Barry Gibb has carried the torch of his mentor's legacy into every corner of the music world. In 2002, Barry surprised fans by incorporating a tribute to Roy into the Bee Gees' one-night-only concert in Las Vegas. As the stage lights dimmed, Barry stepped forward with a lone acoustic guitar and played, In Dreams, exactly as Roy first performed it, voice quivering, melody suspended like an unanswered question. Behind him, archival footage flickered on a giant screen. Roy, in his black suit and sunglasses, singing to empty streets in Texas. The audience sat breathless, many wiping tears as Barry's falsetto soared into the silence. In that moment, Barry realized he had become Roy's living echo, each note a promise he would never let the truth fade. Barry's stewardship extended beyond performances. In 2010, he collaborated with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to curate the Roy Orbison Experience, an interactive exhibit showcasing Roy's handwritten lyric notebooks, childhood photographs, and stage costumes. Barry recorded an audio tour guide, his warm cadence narrating Roy's journey from small-town Texas to global stardom. Visitors could listen to unreleased demos at touchscreens, reading Barry's personal annotations that pointed out Roy's shifts in melody or pauses that concealed the song's deepest emotions. The exhibit traveled internationally, to London's South Bank Centre, Tokyo's Nippon Memorial Hall, and Berlin's Tempelhof, introducing Roy's story to cultures that discovered the Big O long after his passing. Barry attended each opening, greeting fans, signing copies of the companion book, and reminding everyone that Roy's truth transcended time zones. In 2015, Barry partnered with Broadway producers to develop a stage musical based on Roy's life, titled Only the Lonely, The Roy Orbison Story. Barry served as musical consultant, selecting songs and helping craft a book treatment that wove Roy's personal letters into the dialogue. During rehearsals, Barry coached the actor playing Roy on stage presence and posture, ensuring the legendary sunglasses and stark suit felt authentic. He insisted on moments of silence between scenes, buffers for the audience to absorb Roy's grief before the next triumphant chord. When Only the Lonely opened at New York's Nederlander Theater, critics praised it as soaring testament to heartbreak and redemption, applauding Barry's devotion to preserving Roy's truth in every lyric and gesture. The show later toured nationally and internationally, giving new life to Roy's catalog and his philosophy that authenticity must never be sacrificed for spectacle. Barry's philanthropic work also honored Roy's generosity. In 2018, he expanded the Roy Orbison Music Fund into an annual scholarship program at Vanderbilt University's Blair School of Music. The Orbison Scholars receive full tuition to study composition or performance, with the requirement that they craft a song exploring a personal struggle. Barry mentors each cohort, offering critiques and sharing Roy's techniques, how he chose chords that reflected his mood, how he crafted lyrics that balanced sorrow with hope. Scholarship recitals feature Orbison classics alongside original student compositions, forging a living dialogue between Roy's era and the next generation of songwriters. At each award ceremony, Barry addresses the scholars with the same gentle command Roy once gave him: "Sing your truth no matter how it trembles." In parallel, Barry embraced digital platforms to share Roy's wisdom. He launched a podcast series, Orbison's Orbit, interviewing artists influenced by Roy, K.D. Lang, Bruce Springsteen, Emmylou Harris, and discussing how they found courage in his music. Each episode closed with Barry recounting a personal anecdote, from Roy's backstage pep talks to midnight songwriting sessions in Los Angeles. Listeners streamed the series by the millions, creating online forums where amateurs dissected Roy's signature swoops and studied Barry's descriptions of Roy's vocal warm-ups. The podcast won a Webby Award for Best Music Podcast, a sign that Roy's voice still resonated through modern channels, and that Barry's role as custodian of that legacy had unlocked new forms of storytelling. Barry's artistic journey came full circle when, in 2020, Queen Elizabeth II honored Roy posthumously with a commemorative Orbison ring, citing his contributions to global music culture. Barry accepted the ring at Buckingham Palace, placing it on display at the Friars Club in New York alongside Roy's original recording contracts. In his acceptance speech, Barry spoke of Roy's perseverance through personal tragedy and the way his songs became lifelines for listeners worldwide. "If Roy taught me anything," Barry said, "it was that the heart's darkest corners hold the spark for the world's brightest music." And now, as Barry approaches 80, he continues to tell Roy's story with unwavering devotion. He curates biannual recording retreats at his Miami Beach studio, inviting young songwriters to collaborate on Orbison-inspired compositions. At the final night of each retreat, Barry performs a private set of Roy's deepest cuts: Blue Bayou, Running Scared, Girl from the North Country, singing each note as if he were once again standing behind Olympic stone walls. Participants describe the experience as hallowed ground, feeling Roy's guiding spirit in every tremble. Tonight, Barry sits in the same leather chair where his journey with Roy began, the Gulf Breeze ruffling platinum record frames behind him. He lifts a vinyl of Mystery Girl onto his vintage turntable and lowers the needle. As Roy's opening notes fill the room, Barry's eyes glisten with memory. At 79, Barry Gibb has finally told the truth about Roy Orbison, that beyond the legend of black clothes and soaring voice lived a man whose compassion, resilience, and unflinching pursuit of authenticity reshaped music's landscape, and who, through Barry's lifelong dedication, will continue to inspire every heart that listens.